Hello everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman and this is your look at the astrology for March 24th through the 30th, 2025. So we are not just in Aries season now, we are in the new astrological year as of last week. And we are also getting ready for an Aries solar eclipse. So as you know, because I've been talking a lot about it, we are in eclipse season. And for me as an astrologer, eclipses are one of the most important things to pay attention to because it really shows where things are beginning to happen, to shift, to change. Astrology is the study of time, and time is always moving, it's always shifting, it's always changing. So it's not to try to control things, of course not, but it's to be able to go with the flow the best that anybody can go with the flow these days. So for those that don't know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman, and I am doing this live from the rolling hills of Central Maryland, and every week we gather live to look at the astrology. You hear me say it every week. The astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And that's the thing about eclipse season, is that eclipses really show us the energy of time. Time is an energy, and that energy really will build around different points. That part we can't change. We can't change the seasons. We can't change the sunrise and the sunset. Those things are fixed, but you are not so fixed. You can work with this time, work with this energy. A good example is, I was thinking about Aries season, and certainly because I'm out here and more in the country than I was. For those that don't know, I was in New York City for 20 years. I am temporarily in Maryland to be with my father, who is not well, and other things as well. And you're sort of more witnessing of the changes of the seasons. It's not that you don't have the changes of seasons in an urban environment, but I'm out here with the owls and the woodpeckers and the deer, and you sort of see the stirrings of life. And so I wanted to highlight that, because Aries isn't just a sign, it's an energy and it's an archetype. This archetype of renewal, new beginnings, the energy that corresponds with the buds on the trees or the shoots coming out of the ground. And I realize that we are an international audience and we are in different hemispheres, different growing seasons. I'm so sorry, astrology is very northern hemisphere biased. But it's just a reminder that it doesn't need to be March, doesn't need to be the spring equinox, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, to tap into this energy. Astrology is about time and sort of the natural flow of time and the seasons of time, but you will experience Aries energy in different moments throughout your day. Hopefully you're not listening to me in a coma, meaning you woke up today. That is also symbolic of Aries, sort of getting out of bed, waking up, starting your day. That's Aries. Not always what we think about with Aries, because we're not really looking at astrology as a personality. We're looking at astrology as an energy, as an archetype. And so here we are, we're in this new season, but we also have one foot stuck. It's not stuck, just sort of planted in the last cycle, the last astrological year, because even though the sun has gone into Aries, astrology really works around the lunar cycle. And it's for that reason, or sort of a parallel, that we see the lunar cycle is still well used in different religions and different traditions, very ancient traditions. And astrology really works with that new moon, that full moon, and then 2 weeks later it's another new moon. So that's why we watch the new and the full moon, or even the quarter moons as well, because it's symbolic of time and the energy of time and how time builds around this lunar cycle. So this week, speaking of the lunar cycle, we have a new moon in Aries. So this is why I said that we have sort of one foot still in an old cycle, because we're still closing out a Pisces new moon, that a Pisces new moon cycle that began on February 27th. And Pisces is the end of the zodiac. it's going to bed, it's going to sleep, symbolically speaking. And then Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. It's waking up. So that's two very different energies and two very different archetypes. They both serve their own purpose. So it sort of gives this idea that we are in this sort of liminal space. We are both in something else that is waning and leaving. We're also stepping into something new. And also, we have the new moon happens to be a solar eclipse. And I was saying this earlier, as an astrologer, the eclipse cycle is something that I pay very close attention to. Perhaps you should too, but maybe that's what I'm here for. But every 6 months we have eclipses. And so we had 2 weeks ago, we had a lunar eclipse in Pisces. There's that, not Pisces, in Virgo. And that eclipse is part of actually a new cycle that's beginning to come into phase. But this eclipse in Aries, even though it's about Aries and new beginnings, ironically, we are closing out an eclipse cycle that began way back on April 20th of 2023. Yes, so these eclipses have about an 18 to 24 month cycle, and it's so a story began to come into your life, whether it's obvious or not, back with those eclipses in April, and I would say even into May of 2023. Then we had another series of eclipses, October of 2023. Then we had another series of eclipses, April of 2024. Another eclipse, we had a solar eclipse on October 2nd. And so the eclipse that we will have on the 29th this week, the 29th of March, it brings to a close that previous eclipse cycle, the one from the 2nd of October, but it is the last one in this cycle, meaning we will not have another eclipse in Aries or Libra, the other sign that's opposite, for another 8-9 years. That is the half cycle of eclipses. And so why do I pay so close attention to eclipses as an astrologer? So eclipses really, again, they show us where things are happening. And each and every one of you that's listening, you have your own astrology. You have your sun sign, you have your moon sign. From my perspective as an astrologer, I pay more attention to the sun sign and the rising sign in terms of looking at where things are happening. But eclipses really put us into the reality of something. Time is an energy, and eclipses are the engine of time. And when we have eclipses every 6 months, here comes that engine of time. And I think I said this in a previous update. I don't use the word portal lightly because I think portal is something that's used very out and about. But this idea that the eclipses almost in a way become like a portal, they become like a doorway or a gateway, because if you think about it, what is a solar eclipse? Even if you can't see it in your part of the world, it is the moon is blocking the light of the sun. There is a punctuation in something. There is a stop and there's a beginning. And eclipses will sort of say that over the next 6 months, we are now in something new. We have the stop, we have the beginning. So yes, we will start anew. And so it is to, in your own way, that's the thing I love about Aries. It's a very physical sign. It's ruled by Mars. There's this whole idea in astrology that each sign of the zodiac has a ruler. And you need to feel Aries. You need to feel the will and the desire. I think it's probably on a cosmic level, no coincidence that we had Mars retrograde from December and January, and we're still teasing out the Mars retrograde, even though Mars has been direct since February 23rd. But Mars is desire, it is power. We have to feel it. We need to feel our power, our personal power, our desire to change something, our desire to move forward, our desire to start anew. Nature just does it on its own. And it's not to say that humans aren't sort of connected to nature, but sometimes we need to really find that energy within us. So that's one of the ways that we can sort of sit with this Aries new moon is also an eclipse, but at the same time, just know that it is a punctuation in the astrology of the year. And then 6 months from now, we'll be having a very similar conversation, but different. We will have another solar eclipse on September 21st. That one will be in Virgo. So we're sort of seeing this threads, this tapestry of time, these different stories weave in and out. And so for me as an astrologer, the eclipses show, where the potential for major milestones in your life to happen. I know somebody that got married, and I just found out about it. And of course, I'm looking at the astrology, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Here are the eclipses. The eclipse in September, on September 17th in Pisces, activated the sun. The sun was the ruler of the seventh. Saturn is on the sun. I know you're like, what is she talking about? But this is where eclipses really talk about these personal milestones in our life. So it could be a move. It could be a shift in gears. It could be a job change. It could be a promotion. It could be a marriage. It could be the end of something. So we have to sort of see what is the story with this eclipse. And we all have our own personal relationship with not just with the signs in our own astrology, but our own relationship with their archetypes. Like, you have your own relationship with the energy and archetype of Mars, the ruling planet of Aries. This eclipse season, it's really important to understand rulerships, even though it's a little bit of a technical point, because it shows us where the energy moves in the sky. For example, when we have this eclipse on Saturday, the 29th, it'll be at 6:58 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The energy will go from Aries to Cancer. Why? Because Mars, the ruler of Aries, is presently in Cancer. You can even see Mars in the sky at night. Perhaps not as bright as it was when it was retrograde, but still very red. You can see it. But Mars is presently in Cancer, so it means that Cancer receives the energy of the eclipse. So we need to know, where's Aries in our astrology? Even if you're scratching your head and thinking, but I'm not an Aries, why is this important? Because you are all 12 signs. Aries represents some part of your life, and in some cases, a very important part of your life. Then we need to look at where's Cancer, because Cancer is receiving the energy of the eclipse. For those that know a little bit of astrology, you may note that both Aries and Cancer are something called cardinal signs. The cardinal signs align with the 4 directions. Aries, Cancer. Well, Aries is the equinox. Cancer is the solstice. Libra, also equinox. And then we have Capricorn, which is also the solstice. Cardinal energies talk about the 4 directions of our life. The 4 directions are the 4 pillars that hold up our life. Aries is an important sign because it reminds us the importance of individuality. Not, of course, at the expense of others, but we can't be so Libra, meaning accommodating, that we lose sight of what we want, what we need. Aries, we can't be so self-motivated and even self-reliant that we forget about other people. Libra. Cancer it represents in astrology the base and foundation. It is a home and family. It is the household that you live in. It is your desire and your need to feel safe and secure, to have family, even especially if that part of your life is complicated. And for many of us, quite frankly, it is. And so this eclipse is not just about new beginnings, it's new beginnings through the sign of Aries, which is initiating us into a new cycle. It's about power and individuality. It's about desire and will. And then with the energies of Cancer, we may see this either literally in our home environment, new beginnings in our home environment. We want to move, we want to make a change. For some people, it's not literally in the home environment, it is within. I want to make a change. I want to start something new so I can really find where's home and who is home. I can put down roots. I can feel safe and secure and stable. Not always easy for everybody, of course, but that's, Cancer is a very primal and root archetype in astrology. It's the energy of the mother, home, past memories. And that sense of memory that really anchors us to something. That's where we have that connection with Cancer. And so Cancer also being a cardinal sign, it really gives us this energy that's taking us into the next 6 months. New beginnings, action, initiation, home, connection, and even with Cancer to forge bonds. Cancer as the first water sign, that that's a very, again, primal energy and archetype, that this Cancer energy allows us to feel like we belong to something, in the sense of whether it's a family unit or people who are like family, or a sense of home. Includes your dog if you want that as well. It's kind of a lot of, and also the solar eclipse makes a square to Mars, so it's really pushing us and galvanizing us over the next 6 months. We do have what's called a trine to Saturn with this eclipse. It does give us an opportunity to create structure, to create stability, to create security, I should hope. I will say, and this is a little bit esoteric in the sense that the solar eclipse makes a square to Chiron. In fact, this week on the 26th of March, we will have Mars square Chiron. This is actually the last square that Mars will make to Chiron. Mars has been, of course, with the retrograde. It's made 2 previous squares to Chiron. I think the other square to Chiron was in early, I think January, beginning of January. Chiron has been in Aries since 2018 and 2019. But what is Chiron? Chiron is a newer addition to astrology. It's not something we learned about in elementary school. But for me as an astrologer, I look to Chiron because it gives me deeper material. Maybe this is the Scorpio in me. Like, I want to get into the deep stuff, especially if I'm working with a client. It's not just me about telling you about your life. It's hopefully to start to reveal something. And we all have something that, if I pressed on it, myself included, because I'm a human, it's tender. There's a knot. There's, I don't want to say wounds, and a wound is something that's often used as with Chiron, because it kind of gives this sense sometimes, and falsely, that there's something wrong with us. We're wounded, that we can't heal, and then that becomes a suffering. But Chiron says that we need to take the things that have made us suffer the most and use it like medicine to help and inspire other people. Chiron and Aries, the medicine is to find our courage and bravery, not just for ourselves, but for others. When we do something that is hard, when we find our bravery to overcome something, to start something, to even initiate something with the energies of Aries, it becomes this, I can't think of the word, becomes an inspiration for other people. And that's where the healing happens. And so Chiron's very subtle. It doesn't typically work on our physical plane. You don't have a Chiron transit and something happens. Sometimes there is something physical that happens, but it really connects to something that has very deep psychic roots. And that's really where Chiron does its work. It doesn't do it, again, in the physical. It does it in the emotional and the spiritual and the psychic. There may be something that's really buzzing around, so to speak, in our emotional body, in our experiences, in our thoughts, that even over the next coming weeks, that actually presses on something very deep. So do we, in the case of Mars over in Cancer, have the courage to move on, to let go of the past, to turn over a new leaf and start something new? And one of the reasons I use I used Chiron, and I love Chiron, is because its symbol is a key. And when we're able to connect to the collective experience, then Chiron can become a key and open up our higher potential. So that's not overt in the energies of this eclipse, but it's something that may be a thread in our experiences, even going into next September. This idea that we need to heal something personally, collectively, we need to find our courage and bravery, and we need to do something in order to inspire other people positively, of course. This eclipse, it does plant a seed. Eclipses, they really have an energy that's alive. This is why, and even though you might be thinking, like, why was she talking about eclipses 3 months ago? It wasn't eclipse season. Why is she talking about eclipses 3 months from now? Because that seed will get activated at different points, whether it's the next lunar cycle that will start us in April. I think the next new moon will be at the end of April. Scorpio new, no, not Scorpio new moon, Taurus new moon. Whether it's Mars, because Mars is the ruler of the eclipse, going into Leo, back into Leo on April 18th. So we may see eclipse energy, or at least a shift in the narrative around the 18th of April. Mars will continue its way, I think in July it gets into Virgo, so we will see different periods as Mars goes into the different signs all the way into September. And then 3 months after the eclipse, it becomes like this nexus for things to happen. So we need to look at June of 2025 to give us a deeper lens on what's happening. Also in June, Jupiter will go into Cancer. There's that sign again, not Aries, but Cancer. And then more importantly, a week before, on May 24th, we will have actually Saturn go into Aries. And Saturn going into Aries, and this is something that I'm sure there will be a webinar. Well, I'm sure there will be a webinar about this. Just need to make it. But this is a big deal because Saturn, every 3 years, it changes signs. And Saturn is the master timekeeper for astrology. So Saturn will concretize and make real these energies of the eclipse as we get into the end of May. Something to put a little pin in, and we will see how the story of the eclipse and this sort of initiation into new beginnings unfolds over the next 6 months. But here are, so like I said, our key points, like I said, going into April 18th with Mars going to Leo, or even Saturn going into Aries on May 24th, or even Jupiter in Cancer on June 9th. And really this will take us into the end of the cycle, into the beginning of September. So, speaking of Aries, we do have another big change, and I will talk more about this next week because it needs its own focus. But Neptune will go into Aries, and Neptune, kind of like Chiron, doesn't work on a very obvious physical level. Neptune is part of a cohort of planets that are evolutionary in nature. Their job is to get us to grow and evolve. Neptune has been in Pisces the last 13 years. I know, since 2011 and 2012, Neptune last went into Pisces on February 3rd of 2012. So ages ago. Like on a personal level, like feels like another light year since 2012. But Neptune has not been in Aries for the last 160 years. Yes, you heard that correctly, because Neptune moves so slowly that it spends 14 years in each of the 12 zodiac signs. So this is one of the reasons why 2025 is a very unique year, because we have this parade of planets that change signs that don't typically change signs. Pluto, even though Pluto going into Aquarius finally happened in November 19th of 2024, it's quite close. I can sort of scooch it in to the astrology of 2025, and then Neptune is the next planet to go. It goes into Aries. Again, I mentioned Saturn going into Aries on May 24th. Jupiter into Cancer, that happens. Jupiter changes signs once every year, but that is June 9th. And then Uranus and Gemini on July 7th. We haven't had Uranus and Gemini since the 1940s. So Uranus and Neptune and Pluto, they move very slowly, but they will shape and shift different eras because they do move so slowly. But whatever Neptune is bringing to Aries, it's not obvious. It has to be felt. It has to be picked up on. It has to be intuitive, because Neptune works in that very liminal space, that intuitive space. It's like there is this intermediary plane between our physical reality and our non-physical reality, and Neptune dissolves that boundary. So if you've ever been through a Neptune transit, either you feel really spacey or tired, or you get really into spirituality, or you feel absolutely the opposite. But Neptune, by and large, is trying to open us up. So save that for next week, and we'll be in a completely new world. Hopefully that's, I don't mean that ominously, with Neptune and Aries, but just to sort of feel out what this transit is going to be. So we have enough to focus on with the Aries solar eclipse this week on the 29th on Saturday. I will add that this week on the 27th, March 27th, Venus will go back into Pisces. I wanted to highlight that because Venus will make a conjunction to Neptune in Pisces. So this will be Venus and Neptune's last conjunction in Pisces for another 160 years. I know, a long time. And, Venus, they always, at least in different astrological books I read a long time ago, they always talked about how Neptune was the higher octave of Venus, that Neptune could be higher love or unconditional love. It's a tall order, and sometimes Neptune doesn't really work out that way for us mere mortals, but it is to feel into the beauty and the compassion of what this conjunction could mean on the 27th. So having said all that, let's look through each of the 12 zodiac signs. Listen for your sun sign, listen for your rising sign. These are your two major points of time in your astrology, and you need to know your birth time in order to know your rising sign, just as an aside. So let's look through each of the 12 zodiac signs, starting with Aries. Aries, so Mars is your planet, and Mars is still in Cancer. I know it continues to be about your home environment, your living situation. You have your own story, sort of to see how this has been unfolding, whether it's been since the beginning of the year when Mars went back into Cancer on the 6th of January, whether it was even in September, October, when Mars was in Cancer. But that's where a lot of the action's going on. Some Aries rising is you're moving, you're making changes in your living situation. I can think of an Aries that's going to be a parent soon, so that would be a change in the living situation. But of course, you're all different people. Aries, also, we will have a solar eclipse on March 29th. So this is our last eclipse in Aries. It's part of this series since 2023 that has made it very dynamic to be an Aries. When I say dynamic, typically if you are an Aries rising or an Aries sun, things have been happening in your life the past couple of years. Births, marriages, moves, personal changes, personal milestones and achievements. And here you are. So if your birthday is the 29th, happy birthday, plus or minus a couple of days. It is a powerful new year for you, and one where you will see or potentially see that change in your home or living situation. I said this in the introduction, but it's worth mentioning. This eclipse does make what's called a square to Chiron. So there is an emotional and psychic element to this too. It's not just new beginnings, but it's new beginnings where it's about finding your courage and bravery to move on, to take action, to start something new, and maybe needing to heal something. Taurus, so Venus is your planet, so it's still retrograde. That just means that you need to walk back on something, review something, sit with Venus. Venus will go into Pisces this week. It will return to Pisces on March 27th. So Pisces for you is something called your 11th sign. It sort of shifts the focus to friends, community, and in some cases, social issues and social causes, because the 11th is a space that tries to make us aware of the greater whole. We are not an island. We need community. We need social connection. We need friends. We need allies. And how are you building that in your life? And even for some Tauruses, how do you feel inspired and motivated to serve, to help other people, for example? I will say that in April, Venus will turn direct on April 12th, but before it turns direct on April 12th, it will make make a conjunction to Saturn. I wanted to put that on your radar because as we get into April, Saturn typically, like, we need to make a decision, a commitment. It makes things real. We have to take a step up into something. We have to step into a role. We'll continue to revisit this, but it's, Saturn energy asks us to do better, to do more, to show up, to honor our commitments, to honor our whatever we can contribute to the world. So that said, this eclipse that we're having this week is in your 12th. Your 12th represents the last space. So we've gone from the 11th, which is friends and community, to the 12th. The 12th represents the world beyond this world. That could be something as simple as paying attention to your dreams, meditating more. And for some of you, it is to reach beyond this world, to seek, to explore, to find answers, to feel like you are feeding your life with something deeper. Venus was in this space, not at the time of the eclipse, but it has been in this space. So maybe you have felt a little bit more tired or dreamy, or needing to make sure that you are really fulfilling your life with something more deeply. But by and large, when there's an eclipse in the 12th, it puts you into this period of your life where you need to release things, you need to let things go. I know not everybody wants to hear that. It is the role of the 12th. It reminds us that we can't take everything with us. So with that in mind, for you to be very conscientious about what you are bringing with you into the next 6 months and beyond, and what you are leaving behind. Gemini, Mercury is your planet, and Mercury, it's still retrograde. It will go back into Pisces. I can't remember which day it goes back into Pisces. That's in April, but this week it's still retrograde. So for you, it's in Aries. Aries is your 11th, and so the function of a retrograde, and particularly Mercury retrograde for you, is for you to integrate, for you, because typically Gemini, it likes everything, wants to try everything, wants to do everything. And the beauty of the retrograde says, hey, hold on, slow down, maybe take a step back, maybe see if this is a good choice or not a good choice, if this works for you, if this doesn't work for you, because ultimately the space of the 12th is to have the wisdom to make the right choice, to know what our choices are making and where they're leading us, because the 11th, which is where you're sort of symbolically at right now, is to look towards the future, to see beyond the horizon. And for some of you, it is about your allies. Like, who are your friends? Who are your allies? When Mercury does go back into Pisces, I think that's I can't remember what date that is, but I think it's the end of this month. Wait, it is the end of the month. Maybe it's beginning the next month. Mercury will turn direct in something called your 10th. So it's in a space where maybe as you go into April, you need to make more concrete decisions. You need to figure out which way you're going and to take on more duties and responsibilities. Having said that, we do have an eclipse in Aries. It sort of picks up on these themes about allies and friendships and social issues, social causes, the future that you are creating. And over the next 6 months, it may be a very busy 6 months, one where you might be on getting more involved in your community, starting a group or getting involved with a group, creating a deeper connection with your friends and community. And in some cases, getting very clear about the type of friends and community you want, and perhaps not the type of friends and community that you want. Cancer. So the moon is your planet, and this week we're coming to the end of the lunar cycle. So typically it's a time to rest, but I'm not quite sure how one can rest because we are on the cusp of a solar eclipse. So we will have a solar eclipse, which is when the moon blocks out the light of the sun. The moon represents you symbolically, but the solar eclipse will be on the 29th of March. This solar eclipse is kind of a big deal for you because it's in something called your 10th. It says that over the next 6 months, a lot of the focus of this eclipse is about your career, your public life, the duties and responsibilities that you carry in this world. And the energies of the eclipse point towards Cancer. That's you. So there's something in this eclipse that's about power, personal power, taking the lead, moving forward, but also needing to get a handle on your professional life. This is not we've had an eclipse in this space last April 2024. So this, in a sort of ironic way, it brings in new beginnings, but it also brings you to a conclusion of a story that you have been navigating in your professional life even since 2023, because the first eclipse in this series was back in April of 2023. But this is a time of new beginnings. This is a time of stepping into a role, taking the lead, but it is also a dynamic time for you in your life. And so things may be happening, and especially as we get into April, that might be a month where life is getting a little bit more hot. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and so this week it is not only Aries season, and Aries is a fellow fire sign just like you, but we also have a solar eclipse. So this solar eclipse is going to happen in something called your ninth. The ninth is not a space where we can really tangibly touch it. The ninth talks about what do we believe in, what do we stand for, and that space is very subjective. It's based on, what do we believe in? Well, maybe because we have a degree that says, oh, this is what we believe in, this is what we stand for. Or maybe because you are involved in certain philosophies or even certain religions, or maybe you've traveled and you really want to see the world, you want to see different points of view and different perspectives. This eclipse, it's the last eclipse in a series since 2023. But it is a space that is touching on a need to express something. It could be express a faith, it could be express a truth. It doesn't have to be capital T truth, but it's your truth. And for some Leos, this solar eclipse talks about a need for education, to either go back to school, start school, get a degree. For some Leos, this says the next 6 months will be about a lot of travel, and perhaps even a lot of foreign travel or long distance travel. And for some Leos, you're publishing a book, you're starting a podcast, you're speaking out more, or you're just really reflecting on what is it that's really, sort of guiding and navigating your life. Because the ninth is where we sort of create a sense of structure about that sort of which way we go. Is it this way or is it that way? The energies of this eclipse point towards something called your 12th. This is bringing up a lot of big questions. Where am I going? What am I doing? Again, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? The 12th, if the 9th, you find the answers outside of yourself, in a book, on a plane, in a different country, with a degree in church or some sort of philosophy. But in the 12th, you find those answers within. So there's the need to go both outside of yourself and inside of yourself for the next 6 months. Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and Mercury is still retrograde. Right now, Mercury is retrograde in something called your ninth, not your ninth, your eighth. And, maybe this is a little bit of a check-in, Virgo, like, what's going on? How do you feel? Because sometimes when there's a lot of energy in the eighth, it brings up deeper emotions. These could be emotions around relationships, not just romantic relationships, but somebody asked me, like, when she says, sometimes I say capital R relationships. Capital R relationships mean these are our primary relationships. It could be a partnership, it could be a marriage, it could be a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever that we live with, but also our primary relationships in our life. A lowercase r relationship is the people we interact and socialize with. Maybe people who are not primary, they're more secondary, perhaps even tertiary, but it really talks about the sense of connection and socialization. So that said, the eighth is a space where we have to do a lot of looking within. It's a lot of searching ourselves, confronting ourselves. If you've been to a therapist, you've been to the eighth, or what I call the eighth room. And so this has been bringing up a lot of deep information, or deep discovery, deep information, and maybe you've needed to speak with somebody or speak with a trusted confidant. Maybe you've had really deep conversations over the past couple of weeks, but it is touching on something that may be hidden or something that is about personal power or trust and control. This will bring you back to relationships. So we will have Mercury turn direct. I think it's on April 7th, and Mercury will turn direct in Pisces, your relationship sign. And so maybe just this is talking about something about relationships, even though the energy of this eclipse is someplace else. This may even be talking about relationships on a broader level, because the energy of this eclipse points towards your 11th, friends, community, society, humanity. It's not just about relationships in your life. It's about, connection on a larger level. And whether you feel inspired or motivated to do something in the world right now, whether you're still trying to figure that out, or whether you're trying to, talk about themes with friends and figure out who your friends are, who can you trust, who can you share your life with. But that's where a lot of the action is happening with this eclipse. And if there is an internal change with the eclipse, because the solar eclipse is in your 8th, the energy may be manifesting in a space that really shapes and directs your future, in the sense that you may want to make a change in your life, going in a different direction, because you've realized something about yourself. It's a little bit subjective, but it is to sort of sit with what's coming up with these eclipses, because it's possible there's a lot of powerful emotional material, and this is building on the heels of that Virgo lunar eclipse that we had on March 14th that put you in the spotlight. Libra. So Venus is your planet, and this week Venus leaves Aries, where it's been, and it's going back into Pisces. Venus was in Pisces pretty much throughout the entirety of January, just minus a couple of days on either side of the month. And so in your own time, Libra, it's to maybe go back and reflect on January. What was going on within your life? What was coming up for you? Pisces is a space in your astrology that talks about your day-to-day life, your day-to-day work, service, helping other people, and even health and wellness. It was perhaps getting or starting the year where you're just like, okay, I want to put these frameworks in motion. I want to get this organized. I want to get this cleaned out. I don't know what the follow through was, but maybe with Venus going back, you need to return to some of those early year initiatives and ideas that you had. For some Libras, this is about health and wellness. You need to go back to something on a physical level, how you take care of your body, the foods that you eat, and maybe even reprioritize things. It is a vibe shift, and certainly with Venus going back into Pisces, you will meet up with Neptune. It is to either let something go, to heal something, to find compassion, to see a relationship issue from a different perspective. It is to shift a value, or even to feel inspired to help and to heal and to help other people. Venus will turn direct on April 12th, so we've got a little bit more time. And I said this to Taurus, and I'll say it to you because you're both ruled by Venus. Venus is pretty much going to sit around Saturn throughout April. So what this means to you is that Saturn is trying to make things, Saturn typically as a planet makes things real. So April is a month for things to be real. You can use that energy to set boundaries, to start something, to clear things out, to really, if you want to make something solid in your life, it's to do it with the energies of Saturn. But Saturn it may be asking more of you, certainly in April, and you might start to feel that, especially as we get into the end of this week. Having said that, you will have an eclipse in Aries on April. I'm in April already. You will have an eclipse in your 7th sign of relationships on March 29th, so Saturday. And this is a big deal because it says that the focus of new beginnings is in your relationships for the next 6 months. And the energy is pointing towards your household. Obviously you're all different people. It could be a move with you and your partner. It could be the starting of a relationship. It could be 2 people moving in. It could be the start of a family. It could be a time to really focus on these 2 areas of your life, because it may look very different in your case. What are relationships to you? Do you have relationships? Do you live in the middle of nowhere surrounded by nobody? You're of course not. You're Libra rising or Libra, but this idea that it is a next 6 months where you need to focus on other people and the duties and responsibilities that may come with that. Scorpio. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet. Mars, it's in Cancer. So the energy of your sign is pointing over to a fellow water sign. Cancer for you is about, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What are you passionate about? What do you think is true? What do you want to share with the world? How do you want to inspire and motivate? What do you want to be an advocate for? Of course, every Scorpio is different. The energy of the ninth talks about things that we can't necessarily quantify. Perhaps you can with the ninth as a space of higher education. You can quantify it with a degree or some sort of fancy letter after your name. But the ninth typically gets into bigger philosophical questions. Again, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? And what do you think is true? In a way, you are being pulled into this eclipse, even though it's not in Scorpio. Why? Well, this eclipse is going to be in Aries. Aries is something called your sixth sign. The sixth sign is about health and wellness, but it's also about work and projects, operations, getting everything organized, for example. And this eclipse is pointing towards Mars. Mars represents you symbolically, and Mars is in the ninth. So this could be a next 6 months of new initiatives, new projects that may talk about education, travel. Maybe you are traveling a lot in the next 6 months. Perhaps you're even traveling an international or long distance. For some Scorpios, this puts a focus on teaching. Perhaps you have something to teach. You are teaching more. You're creating curriculum. For some Scorpios, this is about service, and certainly service that is informed or directed by something that is very deeply philosophical to you. Regardless, this is a solar eclipse that has a lot of oomph and power, is trying to initiate something. And for some Scorpios, that may need to be about health and wellness. You need to take some sort of initiative with your physical life that is based on a shift of perspective, a shift of belief, and a shift of philosophy. And maybe whatever personal and even positive changes you're making in your day-to-day life, you can use that to share, to rally, and to inspire and motivate other people. Sagittarius, Jupiter is your planet, and Jupiter is still in Gemini. The focus of the last, certainly the last 9 months, 10 months, has been relationships. I've said this, I know, multiple times, but this just is, in terms of Sagittarius's astrology, it's a time of big stuff happening. Meaning it's about home, it's about family, it's about relationships, it's about your life turning a corner, it's about putting down new structures and creating new futures. This eclipse, however, it is in something called your, gotta do the math, Katie. It's in something called your fifth. Yeah, that's right, fifth. It's in your fifth sign. The fifth sign, and this is not the first eclipse in your fifth sign. In fact, you had one back on April of 2023 and April of 2024. But this is the last one. So this has been this sort of push for you to take yourself and take your talent seriously. It doesn't quite, well, it's not 100% true. It doesn't seem like it fits with some of this narrative about relationships and family and roots and connection. But I think in the way that it does is because it's trying to get you to remember who you are. Even if life asks more of you and asks more duties and responsibilities, whether it's in the household or whether it's within a relationship, don't forget to nourish that spark within. So this eclipse for some Sagittariuses, it is about like you, like how you express yourself, how you show up, how you prioritize the things that light you up and give you joy and give you passion. For some Sagittariuses, this is bringing you into a very creative next 6 months. Creativity isn't just art, is your ability to take the best of yourself and to put it into something. And for some Sagittariuses, because there is such a narrative about relationships and home, obviously this is not everybody, it may also be about children and pregnancy, for those for whom that is relevant. This eclipse is pointing towards the 8th, and so it's about you, but it's also the energy of the 8th, which means about, in a way, letting something about you go. We all go through these different phases of life where we say goodbye to a part of ourselves. That part, that version of ourselves got us here, but it's not going to bring us to the next stage and chapter. The eighth is where we look within. The eighth is where we face ourselves. The eighth is where we get into very sometimes tender and even private parts of ourselves. It is the energy of Cancer. It perhaps is the energy about family and connections, the past and memories, and how even that has shaped you. But the more that you strip away the things that you aren't, you can help to reveal who you truly are. Capricorn, Saturn is your planet, and so Saturn continues to be in the third. I know I've said this, but you've got a big change on the horizon, not just this week with the eclipse, but Saturn will go, your planet will go into Aries on May 24th. So there is a shift, especially within June, July, and August. It is a time of major new beginnings. That said, as I alluded to, we have a solar eclipse this week. The solar eclipse is in your fourth sign of home and family, roots and foundation. You had an eclipse here back on April of 2024. You had an eclipse here back on April of 2023. So this is not a story that you should be unfamiliar with at this point. Some Capricorns have moved and perhaps even made a big move over the past 2 years. I can go through a list of Capricorn risings in my head, and I'm like, yeah, there was a major move. Of course, it's not going to be everybody, but it has shown that there has been a lot of big changes in the home environment, and that includes the start of a partnership, moving in with a partner, planning, starting a family and marriage. And for some Capricorns, a need to take care of family, including perhaps even aged or elderly parents. But that area of your life is the main focal point for the next 6 months. And then the energy of the eclipse points over to relationships. It's about you, it's about family in the household, it's about other people, relationships. So it is a lot that's going on with this eclipse. It says the next 6 months, even though this eclipse is not in your sign, it is a very dynamic time to be a Capricorn. Again, moves, change, personal milestones, shifts, but that's what eclipses do. Having said that, when Saturn gets here on May 24th, Saturn may make this new phase of your life more real, more concrete, and it's to use June, July, and August as a lens for this eclipse energy. Aquarius, so Saturn is your planet. So Saturn is still over in Pisces, but you've got a change on the horizon. Every 3 years, every 2-3 years, Saturn changes signs, and so Saturn will finally make its first arrival, but this will be on May 24th, and it will go into Aries. So we'll talk about that, but I just wanted to put it on the horizon. That said, Aquarius, this eclipse that we're having on the 29th, so Saturday, is in something called your third. So this is the final eclipse in a series of eclipses that have been bouncing back and forth between what's called your ninth and your third. So since April 2023. What's the ninth and the third? These are two spaces that talk about education, travel, information, ideas, and the need for these information ideas to become something. So for some Aquariuses and Aquariuses rising, you've really been focused on education for the last 2 years. You've been taking classes, you've been going back to school, you've been working on a degree. For some, it's not literal, it's more trying to figure out, educate yourself, trying to figure out what you believe in, what you stand for. For some Aquariuses, you have been writing a book. You have been publishing that book, or you have been doing more speaking. It's been about your voice and even sharing your voice on a public level. For some Aquariuses, it's about really looking at the options and needing to weigh your options. Is it a this way or that way? And that's one of the deeper looks at the third, because typically we're like, oh, it's about education, it's travel, and maybe it has been a very busy past couple of years. But it's at the deepest part of the third that we really have to weigh our options, because we can't choose everything. even though the beauty of the third is that it brings us into the multiplicity and diversity of life, it's through the third that ultimately we have to make choices. And so over the next 6 months, you may need to make choices, and these might even be major choices. And certainly with Saturn going to Aries, your planet going to Aries on May 24th, the energy of this eclipse points over towards Cancer. It is your sign of either health and wellness or your sign of work and projects, a need to get things organized and to really sort through your day-to-day life. So choices about how you're showing up, how you're doing your day-to-day life, choices about helping and healing and serving, helping and healing other people, serving, showing up in the world. And for some Aquariuses, a need to look at your health and sort of the choices that are impacting it and needing to figure out, is it this way or that way? It's not a major eclipse compared to some of the other signs, but I think with Saturn getting ready to leave Pisces on May 24th, in a way it brings you more concretely into the energy of the eclipse starting in June and July and August. Pisces. So Jupiter is your planet. And so I've been saying this with some of the other signs because your planet is actually going to start to change signs on June 9th. I realize it's still March, but it does say that June is a shift in your personal narrative. The energy of your sign will start to point towards a different part of your life. That said, we do have an eclipse this week, and this eclipse it's interesting because even though this is not about the eclipse, Neptune will finally leave Pisces. And we'll talk more about this next week because it's like informing the eclipse, but Neptune is so like a vibe. It's like Neptune is like so in the background. It's like the music is going to change, but maybe we might notice it. We may notice it, but it just in your own time, like reflect back on the fact that Neptune has been in Pisces since 2018, not 2018, geez, go back, 2011 and 2012. So it's been a long time for Neptune to be in Pisces. Neptune will go into your second sign of money and income. It's too big of a conversation to really parse out, and certainly it's really dependent on everybody's chart, because that's the thing about evolutionary planets. Neptune's an evolutionary planet, is that it really works with who you are and the life you've lived and the consciousness that you have. But there's that, and then there's this eclipse. So this eclipse is in your second sign of money and income. It's not the first eclipse in this part of your chart. In fact, it's the last eclipse in a series of eclipses that have taken you since April of 2023 all the way to this moment. And whatever is happening, it's not a new story. Whether it is literally about money, and how you make it, how you spend it, how you earn it, investing in things, should you do this, should you not do this. But it's also about our material life, material stability, and material security. We all need a roof over our head. We all need food. We all need some sort of resource. Some people may think they need more or something different, but we're still humans. We need these basic fundamentals. So you're moving into a period, certainly when Saturn gets there on May 24th, but this period that's really highlighted your material life. And to see that maybe this eclipse will talk about another phase, another chapter in how you earn a living or the spending, or even on a deeper level, what do you value? Because the role of the second, especially when we have major transits there, is to get us to get more clear about what we need and what we don't need. Not everybody needs a big fancy house. Not everybody needs lots of this or lots of that. So especially with Saturn getting there at the end of May, it's to get very clear about, what is going to create stability in your life, what is going to create security. And this is, again, pairing off of an eclipse that we had even back in October of last year that was about finance and assets and setting up an estate. But this story will shift in narrative, and the Neptune element is a question mark. But even when I see Neptune as part of the money story, I sort of say it like this to my clients. I don't care if they give you $1 million to do what you do. First, it has to feed your soul. And perhaps some of the questions that these eclipses have been bringing up will come to a different phase or reality when Saturn gets there at the end of May. So the energy of this eclipse will point towards Mars and Cancer. Cancer is a fellow water sign. It is something called your fifth. So it's not just about money and resource. It's about your creativity, your self-expression, and perhaps even the value of what you create. Now, it might also be in the mix as well. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology of this week, March 24th through 30th, 2025. We will talk about Neptune and Aries next week. We will debrief on these eclipses and really see like what is the story that's sort of coming to the forefront, and it's going to be an interesting April. So having said that, you can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. You can book a consultation with me, because in reality, it's to see what these eclipses are truly for your chart, because you only have your chart. It's not just your sun, your sun sign. And then you can also follow me on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Spotify. I'm on YouTube. And I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.